Wild animals and water, those are the topics in today's Echo Africa show. A warm welcome from me, Chris Alems, in Ogun State, Nigeria. And I'm not alone on the show today. Hello, Sandra.
Thank you, Chris. And yes, it is a big hello from me too, Sandra Twinobdio, right here in Uganda's capital, Kampala. So I would like to ask you to come along and join us on a journey across the continent. This is what is coming up shortly for the next half hour. A community in Ghana is taking care of a habitat for sacred crocodiles. A prototype for water treatment aims to ease South Africa's drinking water scarcity. And a desalination plant in Somalia is supplying households there with water. But first, we are off to Zimbabwe, home to some 83,000 savanna elephants. After Botswana, it has the second largest wild elephant population in the world, but they are under threat. And as is so often the case, the causes are complex. Climate change is forcing people to leave their villages and settle close to the elephants' watering holes. And that can lead to conflict between people and the animals. Now, one project in Zimbabwe is finding solutions.
The Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe is a paradise for mammals and birds. Zimbabwe's largest national park is also home to some 45,000 elephants. Only neighboring Botswana has more of the endangered African savanna elephants. Philip Kuvawoga grew up here. Today he works for the IFAW, the International Fund for Animal Welfare. The animal rights activist advises the park on how to protect its elephants.
Without elephants, there is no savanna ecosystem, because elephants are your ecosystem engineers or ecosystem gardeners. They break off big branches to create grasslands and maintain grasslands. And by their nature, elephants travel long distances. And as they traverse these ecosystems, they pick up seeds that they disperse.
The elephants are hunted down by poachers for their tusks. The park rangers do their best to protect them, but they have a huge area to patrol. The park's 14,600 square kilometers are guarded by barely 200 rangers. That's why the IFAW is helping out. They provide anti-poaching training, refresher courses and support the work of canine units. The organization has provided park management with the equivalent of 2.5 million euros since 2019. A lot of money that the park is using also to construct new buildings and buy equipment such as walkie-talkies. But the rangers know that no project can work without the support of the local population.
If there is no proper community relationship between the park and the communities, you would notice that the issues of poaching will be difficult to address. So it's important to carry out as much awareness campaigns, but more importantly is to come up with a project so that the community themselves will realize the benefit of staying closer with wildlife.
But one source of conflict is water. That's because both the animals in the park and the people living in the area depend on the same rivers for drinking water. The elephants are the most dangerous competitors. At the Badombe River, park rangers have implemented a new plan. The people in the village of Matetsi now have their own boreholes for water. That's a huge relief for Shamani, Mpala and the other villagers.
Life here was risky. We avoided fetching water at the river in the morning and evening. We also tried chasing away the elephants by making noises with tins. Sometimes we would even burn plastics and oils, but none of that helped.
Zimpark and the IFAW have so far drilled wells in 4 villages on the edge of the Hwange National Park. Thanks to solar-powered pumps, tanks with a capacity of 10,000 litres can be filled. Around 1,200 of the 20,000 people living in the Hwange area get their drinking water at these boreholes. When they have time, park rangers reach out to the community to discuss the plight of the animals, but they don't have enough personnel to do it on a regular basis. And they have too little data about the animals' migration corridors.
We as communities were to respect the corridors. And the ecologists from parks, they should help us about these corridors, how to identify an elephant corridor or lion's corridors. If these corridors are open, these wild animals will go pass through and go, and they will come back on their corridors because they have a movement pattern that they have.
The animal welfare activists face another big challenge: climate change. Less rain and more frequent droughts cause distress for the animals. The IFAW is planning to build water catchment areas to alleviate the problem.
We hope by some of the innovative interventions that we are piloting here, including pen scooping, where we aim to harvest as much natural rainwater as possible into these water pens. That way, we might have a chance to adapt and mitigate the impacts and effects of climate change.
The elephant population here is thriving. It's 3 times larger than an elephant population usually is in an area this size.
What we can do is to make sure that between the different core habitats for elephants, protected areas, the community areas, we create enough safe space for the animals to be able to disperse naturally.
The protection program has been a success so far. The officials in Zimbabwe's biggest national park say there hasn't been a single case of poaching in 3 years.
Elephants are such majestic creatures, and it's impossible to emphasize enough how essential they are for our ecosystem. Let's stay on that topic of biodiversity and wildlife, but let's move from pachyderms to reptiles.
That's right, Sandra. Our next report is about crocodiles. Now, most people are afraid of these primeval land predators. After all, they commonly doze all day in the water and then suddenly attack their prey at lightning speed. But not in Paga town in northern Ghana.
This is Paga, a town in northern Ghana. If you want to wake the souls of the dead, you need to bring a live chicken. According to the legend, the souls of the ancestors live on inside the crocodiles lurking in the village pond. They're actually a surprisingly friendly bunch.
If you talk to it, it will hear you. They hear language. If it is moving and you ask it to lay down, when it goes anywhere and you call it back, it will obey. It won't move again.
More than 100 crocodiles live in the pond. Some of them are at least 80 years old, but despite their venerable status, they're not doing well. The pond is full of plastic waste, and it's also drying up. Isahaku Mahama has been bringing tourists here for a long time. They come to see the tame crocodiles. The visitors bring in a lot of revenue for the town. But Mahama says things are changing.
In those days, there were a lot of trees around here, but because there were no houses around, due to that, there was enough trees, and then the place was so bushy, and then you can see the environment green. But now, because of the climate change, and then at the same time, the people encroaching the lands, so it makes the place to change like this.
Suleimana Alidu is also worried about environmental degradation. Whenever he has time, he collects garbage around the pond. He doesn't want his ancestors to have to swim in plastic waste, and a clean pond is healthier for the crocodiles.
If you don't remove the plastic waste, the crocodile will think it is food, and it will swallow it.
Plastic waste isn't the only problem. More and more houses and factories are being built directly around the pond. These once pristine babbling brooks have turned into rivers of waste. And the water doesn't always reach the pond because it gets used for other purposes, like irrigating crops. Even these last green oases are now under threat. The population is growing and needs space, a good business model for some.
Our chiefs know, like they have tried several times to sell this land, and they stopped them. So I still have that feeling. Maybe one day we may lose here, because here is very important to us. So we are afraid to lose here, seriously.
Then there's climate change. It's getting hotter and hotter, and there's little rain. Another reason that there's less and less water in the pond. Residents here want to prevent the worst, although their resources are limited.
In those days, they used to fetch the water for domestic purpose, built in the community. But now we put ban on that. You cannot come in and fetch water and send it to the community.
The souls of the dead would be grateful to their descendants if the pond is preserved. And the survival of the Paga crocodiles is an important symbol of biodiversity preservation in Ghana, which has already lost more than 40% of its wetlands.
Even if the crocodiles are tamed, I don't know if I really like to go there as a tourist. There are certainly some less risky ecotourism attractions. Not far from Venice in Italy, for example, there is a very special amusement park created by Bruno Ferrin. His park offers something truly unique. It's green in more ways than one.
The roller conveyor, the humpback cart, the wheel of death. Those are just a few of the 37 attractions at the amusement park Ai Pioppi, Italian for Under the Poplars. And it was all built by this man.
Stretch your legs out in front of you. Straighten them out. Yes, that's it. Otherwise you'll land with your nose on the rubber.
Bruno Ferrin is 85 years old. He built his first swing here half a century ago.
It's always a joy to come here and see what I've built up in 50 years. It's a great feeling to be able to say about your own life, I made all my dreams come true. Imagine that.
His dream began with a restaurant in 1969. Bruno Ferrin fell in love with this piece of forest. As his wife served wine and sausages under the poplars, he started building swings. He taught himself everything.
I only ever went to elementary school, but I've always understood numbers. It comes naturally to me, working out weights and counterweights for my attractions. Of course, I make mistakes at times and have to adjust the rides if they're too heavy or if the slope isn't right.
What's special about Bruno Ferrin's park is that none of the attractions require electricity. They use the laws of physics and the muscle power of visitors. The newest attraction is the carousel. He had the idea for it after watching a TV report about a training facility for NASA astronauts.
This carousel is powered by these bicycles operated by visitors. When you pedal, the carousel spins. The faster it spins, the more the centrifugal force increases, causing the seat frames to move backwards from the center.
While other amusement parks face closure due to rising electricity costs, Bruno Ferrin is forging ahead and planning for the future.
Energy prices are through the roof, so I'm thinking of installing dynamos on every ride to harness the energy from all the equipment moving around. That's my plan.
Applied on a large scale, that idea would foil the strategies of some world leaders.
Putin wouldn't be very happy at a park like mine, because if everything worked like this, he could no longer sell gas to Italy.
There have been no accidents in the decades-long history of his park, Bruno Furin says. Nothing escapes him.
Sit down, young man. Come on. You need to sit down because it's dangerous. You see, they don't read the signs. That's how Italians are. In Germany, signs are law, but here in Italy, they're optional. Maybe I'll read them, maybe not. That's how it works in Italy.
Around 50,000 visitors come to the park every year. It's open only on weekends and entry is free. Bruno Furin believes it shouldn't matter how much money you have, everyone should have the right to have fun. Most visitors buy something to eat and drink in his restaurant, making the business sustainable. Even at 85, he's still pitching in everywhere he can. He says the freedom to do what he loves has kept him young.
Perfetto. It's a beautiful way to live. Depending on my mood each day, I decide what to do. Isn't that great? My dears, that's the poetry of life.
One that he's devoted to his amusement park.
Now back to Africa for this week's second big topic. Water is essential for life on Earth, but it is becoming increasingly scarce due to climate change. Both conserving drinking water and finding new and different ways to obtain it will be key when it comes to adapting to the changing situation.
Indeed, Chris. Take South Africa, for example. Since 2015, repeated droughts have caused a major water crisis there. In Cape Town, drastic austerity measures had to be implemented to stop the city from running dry. Tinkerers started looking around for alternative solutions. In this week's Doing a Bit, you hear that story.
Natural resources such as gold, diamonds, and iron ore have made South Africa rich. But after the mines have been exploited and abandoned, they slowly fill up with groundwater. It's a huge problem. Toxins are released that pollute the soil and water in the area. But in fact, all this acid mine drainage, as it's called, could still be used. In Krugersdorp, South Africa, chemical engineer Boitumelo Nkatlo is working with the University of Johannesburg on building a device that will turn a mine's poisonous wastewater into clean drinking water. The prototype in Krugersdorp can produce 20,000 liters of drinking water per day. The wastewater undergoes a multi-stage filtering process in which metals are used to remove poisonous compounds in the water, but the process is still in its infancy.
So we will be solving the availability of water, since you know that we have experienced in South Africa water restrictions. So this can serve about 1 million people, especially in the greater Johannesburg, which is very close to 20% population of Johannesburg. So that's what we are advocating for.
South Africa is home to some 550 active mines and an estimated 6,000 abandoned ones. Boitumelo Nkatlo's invention could help to alleviate the poison legacy of South Africa's mines.
And how about you? If you're also doing your bit, tell us about it. Visit our website or send us a tweet. #DoingYourBit. We share your stories.
That's a really interesting approach to accessing drinking water. But the climate crisis means that it can only be one part of our adaptation strategy. If we could use water from our oceans for drinking, bathing, cooking, and agriculture, we could actually dramatically alter the lives of millions of people. This report from Somalia has more.
Securing a day's supply of drinking water is hard work in Kismayo, a city on Somalia's coast. The wells are up to 200 meters deep, and hauling up the water canisters is strenuous. Since rainfall is scarce, fresh water is too. Salt water from the nearby ocean infiltrates and contaminates the wells. Still, Abdul Qadri Ahmed and his neighbors come here most every day. They have no other choice. It's exhausting to draw water from the deep well, and it's salty too. But I cannot afford to buy clean water. In recent years, Somalia has experienced several failed rainy seasons. The land around Kismayo is drying out. For residents, it's a disaster. There's little grazing land left, and animals are dying of thirst. The ground is so parched, it's hardly worth farming. Over 2 million Somalians are already feeling the effects of climate change. Liban Hussein from Somalia's Ministry of Energy and Water Resources is worried about their future. The drought has adversely affected people and their livestock in Kismayo and the surrounding areas. There is a severe water shortage in Kismayo. But even without any rain, help has arrived in the form of a water desalination plant. It was built by Somali business people who wanted to improve the water quality in the wells, so they founded their own farm. We established the Afi Water Supply Company in Kismayo in 2014 after we saw there was no clean and drinkable water in Kismayo. When we dug deep wells, we noted that the water was salty, so we bought machines to desalinate the water. Ordinarily, this will be the government's responsibility, but Somalia has been in political turmoil for decades. The government does not collect enough money through taxation, so there is no public investment, and building a desalination plant requires millions of dollars. At the last climate change conference, Somalia asked industrialized nations for funds to cover such costs as it produces just a fraction of the world's carbon emissions. The desalination plant used to be powered by a diesel generator. It was expensive to operate and environmentally harmful. But now, the company is using green energy. Big solar collectors near the plant replace much of the need for fossil fuels. We were using 15 barrels of diesel per day, which caused a lot of air pollution. After we installed the solar system, we cut diesel consumption by 80%. We use diesel motors at night, but when we have enough water at night, we run the motors. Our water production has increased, and we have lowered its cost by 60%. The desalination plant has been a blessing for people here, supplying fresh water to around 5,000 households. And because solar energy has reduced the cost of clean drinking water, even poorer Somalis can now afford it. People flock here to buy it, as it sells for a fraction of the former price. Now Farhiya Mohammed comes here regularly to, as she says, buy good water for herself and her family. I used to walk 2 kilometers to get water. And then it was not good to drink because the water was so salty. Now Afi brings clean and drinkable water right here close to my home. And that's made her life much easier because despite the persistent drought, she still has access to plenty of drinking water. Though if Somalia's drought gets worse, even salty well water will be in short supply. So the head of the water company aims to build a plant that will desalinate salt water straight from the ocean instead of the salty water from the wells.
It's amazing what's possible. And that brings us to the end of today's Echo Africa show. I hope you enjoyed it and found it inspiring. That's all from me, Chris Lems from Ogun State, Nigeria. See you next time.
So do get in touch with us on our social media channels. Tell us about any projects you know that are helping protect our climate. Would love to hear from you. So from now, it is a goodbye from me, Sandra Twinovideo, right here in Kampala, Uganda.